the idea of decoloniality started in 1920s in the among the Russian academics who emigrated after the revolution. So they wanted to conceptualize what has happened, why the revolution took place, and why the destruction of Russia, the Russian Empire, took place. And one of the solutions to that issue was exactly that Russian mind was colonized. And they thought that this colonization was this colonized mind was actually the communist mind too, because communism was a Western, socialism was a Western philosophical theory, and that is why colonization, meaning the coming to power of socialists or communists or whoever, is of course the sign of the Russian mind being colonized.
We're going beyond decoloniality. With unity and strength, we claim our destiny. We're going beyond decoloniality. Together we stand, forever free.
The next contributor is Irina Filatova. Irina has taught in Russia and in Africa. She's the author of a book, Hidden Thread, Russia and South Africa in the Soviet era. And you're going to say something today about Russian diplomacy towards the global south and the theme of decolonization?
Irina, do you want to come up to the front? Yeah.
You can go back in a moment.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me. Now, I also don't feel very comfortable because everybody here speaks such wonderful philosophical language which I don't quite understand, and I cannot speak like that at all. I'm a historian, political historian, and maybe that is why George asked me to speak not about my chapter, which is quite philosophical too. It is about Russian philosophy. Part of it is decolonization of Russia, decoloniality of Russian mind, which has always been connected with a de-Westernization of the Russian mind, but rather about the use of decoloniality or decolonization theory in political spheres, particularly by Russia. I do have, however, want to say just 2 words about the article itself. I did speak there about the Russian philosophy, which the idea of decoloniality started in 1920s in the among the Russian academics who emigrated after the revolution. So they wanted to conceptualize what has happened, why the revolution took place, and why the destruction of Russia, the Russian Empire, took place. And one of the solutions to that issue was exactly that Russian mind was colonized. And they thought that this colonization was this colonized mind was actually the communist mind too, because communism was a Western, socialism was a Western philosophical theory, and that is why colonization, meaning the coming to power of socialists or communists or whoever, is of course the sign of the Russian mind being colonized. And the second part of that article, it was devoted to the African understanding, in my understanding of African understanding of decoloniality, and how through perhaps Russian interpretations of decoloniality it would be easier to understand what the African philosophers or historians feel or think in that direction. And now what George me asked to do is to speak about the applications of decoloniality, Russian decolonization theory, as far as political aspects of it are concerned. This is a very interesting subject, and I must say that it interests me a lot at the moment, because this policy, Russia's policy in Africa, is highly successful, and to a very large extent it is because of the narrative of decolonization that Russia is using at the moment. I'm sorry, I cough not because of the flu, but rather because of everything, the flowers, etc., the hay fever. Anyway, so the Russian idea of decolonizing Asia, or decolonizing the whole world, actually, came with the help of Russia, was started by Lenin, and it was very successfully used by the Comintern. The very first principles, when Lenin formulated the principles on which the Comintern was based, one of the points there was that, of course, the world is divided into exploiting nations and exploited nations, into the rich and poor nations, and that meant that the exploited and poor nations have to free themselves from this exploitation. But the interesting part of it was that he put Russia among the exploited nations, and his whole idea was that Russia, after the revolution, has to lead these other exploited nations, and together they will win. It is exactly this narrative that Russia, although not revolutionary and not a socialist country, not a communist country at all, is using today in Africa and wherever it can. How did it happen? Russia was not, after the collapse of the USSR, Russia was not particularly interested in Africa. It closed very many embassies, it closed consulates in practically all African cities. It did not do business, it did not trade. So then gradually it started to return. It started to return in about 2010s, I mean late 2000s and early 2010s, and at the first was trade and trying to buy some businesses or some mines in particular, resources, and what we have, the remainder of that era, United Manganese of Kalahari, for example, in South Africa, 2005, or Rusal, Russian company, which owns bauxite mines in Guinea, and there are several others. But basically, mainly, these companies withdrawn. They gone somewhere else, and mainly back to Russia, because that was one of the points of Putin's policy. Now, the second part, which started earlier, but seriously, it started in the mid-2010s, selling arms. Russia became, from that time on, it has become the biggest seller of arms in Africa. And that is a very important trading point for it. Now, another point, establishing nuclear facilities, or at least signing agreements about establishing nuclear facilities, power stations, etc., etc. But something completely different started from 2017, when Wagner Company, private military company, first ended in the Central African Republic. Now, what was happening since then was that Russia got more and more and more interested in Africa strategically and in terms of controlling the elites. That trend has dramatically accelerated and strengthened after the beginning of Russia's war with Ukraine. After that, African direction became one of the most important directions in Russia's policy. Now, as you all know, that policy was very successful because one military coup after another, and particularly in West Africa, in the Sahel, strategically incredibly important region for Russia. My understanding is that what the Russians want is the chain of dependencies or friendly countries across the African continent in that area. This is, of course, minerals. This is, of course, strategic control of that area. It is militarily very important, and already there are negotiations about naval bases, etc., because Sudan is also in that sphere. So, how was it organized? The propaganda, this anti-colonial narrative, was very, very, very important in it. What were the outlets through which Russia used this anti-colonial narrative? This was the social networks. They are very active, and they are very active in South Africa, including South Africa. I'll return to that later. Social media. There were a lot of clips shown both on social media and on official channels in West African countries in particular. Dozens and dozens and dozens of clips showing that Russia never colonized anything at all, and particularly in Africa. They were showing how dreadful the French were and how much they've taken out of Africa and continue taking out of Africa. They are not protecting them properly, Africans, and then Wagner came, and with its blunt tools, it's not only chased away the French, the bad French, but also chased away the terrorists, which is not so easy, as we know. So the Russians are, on the one hand helping to decolonize West Africa from the French. On the other hand, they present themselves as a fellow colony of the very same colonial mind. So they present themselves of being the victims of intellectual colonization, and they call on their citizens to decolonize their mind. This narrative in Russia itself is not very popular. The Russians don't think about these things, and very few of them really are engaged in decolonization of the mind, but they certainly, what works is anti-Westernization. The West is the enemy, and Russia succeeded there.
We need to wrap up.
Sorry?
We need to wrap up.
Okay, but what are the particulars of this narrative? I'm looking at the watch. I do have a few minutes more. Russia never colonized anything. It has always been, throughout its history, it's been fair and just. It helped anti-colonial struggle. It now helps to get rid of former colonialists, and the war in Ukraine shows that the West is racist, colonizing, because it colonized Ukraine, and it needs liberation, and so the African countries have to help Russia to decolonize and denazify Ukraine. Realities are very, very far from this, from such a narrative, and Russia is actually using itself, while this narrative is going on, it's using the colonizing tactics. Because what it does the very same thing as Imperial Russia did, as the British did when they first came to any future colonies. They support the elite, the chosen members of the elite, unlike the French and unlike the West and Americans and Brits now do. The Americans and the Brits and the French, they support the armies, leaving the elite to fend for itself and to organize the elections and democratize their countries and so on. They train the army to help to fend off the terrorists. But Russia doesn't do that. It maintains a particular chosen member of the elite, and it supports that particular member of the elite. If need be, they will help to organize a coup. If there is no need and there is already a ready-made leader, then they will decolonize the country together, by which means the Russians protect the leader. This is a protection business. And the people who protect, and this is now not necessarily Wagner, it is now the Defense Ministry. So what they get for it, they get the shares in the mines, and that they get access to mineral resources, which they control now. This is exactly what happened throughout all these West African countries. The clip that I wanted to show you was the reaction to all this policy by several African politicians, most notably by Malian leader, who is speaking at the summit, Africa-Russia summit last year, and was it last year already? Gosh. He is speaking so vividly about how we together have to decolonize the world, and Russia is the best friend who fought against colonization by the Nazis. It is fighting colonization against the West, and now we are fighting together. And thank you, Russia, for helping us to decolonize ourselves. There is another example of the effect. I'm finishing. Another example of the effect of such influence. I watch only one blog of former MK veterans is accessible to me, and even not all bits of it. But I do get some of quite significant bits from that blog of former MK veterans, and they are all completely, uncritically in love with Russia and what it does, and they all support this anti-colonial narrative. So one of the people participating writes, Ukraine must get rid of its arms because this is the most fundamental demand of Russia. Ukraine must not build military capacity that will pose threat to Russia. Now, there is another demand, and that is denazification. So Ukraine does not only need to be demilitarized zone, but since Ukraine rejected this demand, the special military operations to decapitate Ukraine's military is the only way of achieving sovereignty for Russia. And so it has to be done through grinding war of attrition, which will totally wipe out Ukrainian Nazis. So special military operation has to continue forever if we want to denazify Ukraine. So all that is very, very popular. I think that what happens here with this decolonial narrative being used politically is that there are some words in the history and the mind of each nation, but some nations in particular. And these words are colonialism, revolution, struggle, decolonization. It is like colonialism bad, decolonization good, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. That is Orwell, if you remember, and that is how it is perceived. It's almost a reflective reaction to these words, and people do not think what is behind them. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you very much.
From the ashes of old, we build anew, with dreams that soar and skies so blue. Voices once silence now sing loud in a chorus of hope, war proud. We're going beyond decoloniality. With unity and strength we claim our destiny. We're going beyond decoloniality. Together we stand forever free. Our journey is long but we won't tire, fueled by justice and a burning desire. Hand in hand we pave the way for a brighter, liberated day. We're going beyond decoloniality. With unity and strength we claim our destiny. We're going beyond decoloniality. Together we stand forever free. We are waving goodbye to decoloniality.